Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's CMA Q&A. This is the first of what we're going to call our Credential series, a series of panel discussions on some of the various certifications and credentials that are available in the accounting and finance industry. These have been organized by the Foundation of AFWA. And so we're excited to get these out and get these kicked off. My name is Debbie Williams. I'm the Director of Operations for AFWA, and I'll be helping to lead today's discussion. Real quick, before I get started, just a quick tidbit to let you all know, if at any time you do have a question throughout the presentation, there is a box in the sidebar of the webinar series where you can type in any question. We'll try to keep an eye on those throughout the discussion. If we do miss it, we'll be sure to catch all the questions at the end as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to a representative from the foundation, Melissa Sager. She's going to talk to you a little bit about the foundation as well as some of the scholarships that we offer.
Thanks, Debbie. Like she said, this is Melissa, and one of the primary missions of the Foundation of AFWA is to advance the education of women in the accounting and finance fields by providing numerous scholarships for all stages in a woman's career. We offer undergraduate and master's degree scholarships, which are open to all accounting and finance students. But as a benefit of membership, we have some other scholarships that are available only to the AFWA members. That includes a PhD scholarship and even some membership due scholarships for those affected by natural disasters or unexpected change in employment. But as we are talking today about the CMA, there's two other scholarships that I wanted to highlight, and that is that we provide review course scholarships, and obviously our partner that joins us that you'll be meeting today from Surgent will talk a little bit more about review courses that we offer through them. And then we also provide some scholarships for the certification exam fee. Again, those two are benefits of membership. I know that we may have some people on the call today that are not members, so I would love for you to consider joining as the benefits that you would get in helping you achieve your CMA. And the foundation just encourages women to apply for these scholarships to overcome, because we know some of the financial barriers in our career. And our members and other generous contributors feel that it is so important to help those who come after them, just as they may have been helped on their path to a successful career. And all the scholarship applications can be found on our website, of course, www.afwa.org. And if you have any other questions about scholarships later, I'll be happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed today's panel.
Thank you, Melissa. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump right in and introduce you all to our panelists today. I'm going to let each of you all introduce yourself. Feel free to share, obviously, your name, where you work, where you live, maybe a little bit about your background, how long you've had the CMA, or anything else you might want to share professionally. So Laura, we'll start with you. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laura Mankin. I'm a CMA and a CPA. I am currently serving as the AFWA National President-elect, and I'm coming from Gilbert, Arizona, and I'm currently serving as the Controller for SB Pro, which is a manufacturing company. And I earned my CMA in 2009, a few years after I actually got my CPA in 2006.
Great, thank you, Laura. Catherine?
Hey there, my name's Catherine Schrader, and I live and work in Knoxville, Tennessee, the most beautiful place in the Southeast. I graduated in 1982 with an undergraduate degree in accounting, and after navigating through some different paths, I decided to return initially for a MAC, but a mentor of mine convinced me wholeheartedly that I should get an MBA in entrepreneurship instead. I did that in 1990, and I obtained my CMA in 1995. I worked in public, and then I did private and corporate accounting for a number of years, and had a child late in life and decided to change direction and launch my own private practice. But we don't do typical public accounting things. We mostly work as strategic business advisors and consultants.
Great, thank you. And Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning. If you're on the East Coast, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Wiest. I am Vice President of Market Development with Surgent Professional Education, and we are exam review providers for CPA review, CMA, EA, and some other designations like CISA and CIA. I've been with Surgent for going on 3 years. I relocated from sunny Los Angeles to the Philadelphia area to work for this great company, and it's very cold. So I think I'm in the coldest area of anybody this morning. So I'm jealous of whoever was in Arizona. I think that was you, Laura. I've been in the professional education space for going on 20 years, primarily in the CPA exam space, but have been able to get involved in the CMA and work closely with the IMA and also AFWA. I do serve on the board of directors for Beta Alpha Psi, and have just, again, seen a lot of growth in this designation over the past few years, and so I'm excited to be here and talk with everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So kind of just the first, just to get us started, and Paul, I'll have you maybe talk to this first, but then I know Laura and Catherine both would have comments as well. But just a high level of what exactly is the CMA, just at a high level.
Sure, yeah, I'll be glad to kick us off. And again, yeah, please, Laura and Catherine, jump in. The CMA, or the Certified Management Accountant designation, was developed in 1972, and it was basically a way of showing a level of competence and knowledge in the field of management accounting. So the way I always like to look at it, and I have friends who are CMAs, CPAs look at data and numbers and tell you what happened and tell you what they are, and a CMA looks at numbers and tells you why they are and what you can or should do with them. So, like forecasting and reporting. CMAs typically work as cost accountants, risk managers, corporate accountants, management accountants, financial strategists. They're involved in a lot of decision making and can be at the executive level. And we've also seen some growth in the designation too, as a lot of the consulting and advisory services with some of the accounting firms has grown. We've seen takeoff in the CMA designation here domestically. So I talked to one of my friends again who's a CMA by trade, and I said, so tell me what you do specifically, right? And she's like, she goes, I crunch numbers for internal review, and I do budget analysis. I'm like, yeah, but what do you do? And she goes, I really get involved in a lot of the strategic business decisions, and I provide a lot of analysis and, kind of detailed insight into the financial condition of the company. So, from a high-level overview, a lot of analysis and a lot of opportunity to be involved in big picture forecasting and decision-making.
Thank you, Laura. Catherine, did you have anything to add to that?
This is Catherine. I would say that I love the description that Paul gave and his peer had explained. To me, I always saw the CMA as an internal job within an entity or an organization, but you had to have a very strong outside awareness of what was going on, not only in accounting, but in the business world. And I always explain the role to my clients and the peers in the corporate management structure as having a lot of impact on the bottom line because of the things that CMAs bring to the table. Pricing strategies, understanding the components that go into things. With that internal focus and expertise that the CMA gives you, I think it brings a lot to the table that adds to the bottom line.
This is Laura. I think one other thing I'd add is for most of accountants that work inside companies, we focus on telling the story, what happened through our financials and things like that. When you take that extra step to become a CMA, you get those extra skill sets. you're really sitting at the table, you're helping to write that story. So you're actually creating the narrative instead of just waiting until after it's done. So I think that's one thing that we can bring to the table as well.
Great, thank you. I think that's a great visual and a great picture that you all just drew about the CMA. Kind of jumping into each of your own experience a little bit, and Catherine, I'll start with you. If you just want to talk about what prompted you to earn your CMA and how that has benefited your career since.
Initially, when I started in my family business when I was very, very young, I had anticipated getting a CPA, and quite honestly, throughout my undergraduate degree, that was pretty much the only certification I heard about until I took the first cost accounting classes. And after learning more from the professors that were teaching those courses and understanding how it impacted and fit into corporate entities and manufacturing environments, I started to consider it, but it wasn't until after I got out and did some time in public accounting that I realized I was miserable. I love public accountants, but it is just not for me. I have a very drastically different personality than most accountants do, and I started to want to define my role differently. So I went back for the MBA in entrepreneurship, and that kind of cinched it. I thought there is no way I will ever get a CPA, and I sought the CMA because I felt like for the career path I wanted at that time, it was going to open up many more doors and give me the credentials that would bring me to the senior management table, which is where I wanted to be at that point in time. And I just saw it as much more than just an accounting credential because of the ways I saw how corporate or manufacturing and senior management roles were playing into the bottom line and the operations of an entity. I just saw a CMA as going so much further than even the way the IMA was defining it at the time.
Great, thank you. And Laura?
One of the reasons that I really wanted to get my CMA is I've always been in industry, and so being able to show that through my certifications was important. And I liked what kind of the skill sets and the experience that represented, and how that would be a key step for me growing into more of a leadership role within my companies and things like that. One of the other opportunities that it did open up for me is if you've been in industry, if you've been in one industry for any length of time, it's really hard to transition from that industry to a different one. Accounting is, basically the same. It's, debits and credits, it all works the same, but sometimes when you get into one area, it's harder to make that transition. So I think having my CMA made it so much easier for me to make a transition from manufacturing into healthcare. A few years ago, and so that was definitely something that not everyone can do, and so I think that was really key to open up that opportunity for me.
Great, thank you. I think, Laura, sort of what you just said, and you've I think we've sort of touched on it of sorts, but jumping into an attendee question that we received in the registration, she says that there are no CMAs at her company, and they have at least 6 CPAs. What would earning her CMA bring to the table in her firm?
It sounds like they don't have a shortage of that tax and audit type of experience, and so being able to bring those CMA skills, that business analysis, that analytical side, that strategic planning side, I think that's something that she can definitely sell to her management team as I can bring value to our business. I can also bring that same kind of experience and skill set and observations if it's a public company to your clients as well.
That's great. Catherine or Paul, would either of you have anything to add to that? Just kind of looking at the CMA versus the CPA, what some of the differences might be or what else that might bring to the table?
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is uniqueness. If there are no CMAs, just getting your CMA makes you stand out from the rest, and the subject matter and the expertise it takes to obtain the CMA also sets you apart, I think, from CPAs. One of the things I've had many of my clients express to me, we primarily work with small businesses. They normally have 50 employees or less, and we serve as advisors to them. And the most common feedback or comment I get from them is, wow, you are drastically different than my CPA. And that to me is what makes the CMA stand out. Yes, there's a place for tax and public reporting and, following GAAP and things like that. But when it comes to a business that has to generate cash flow and bottom line in order to keep going and obtain goals for growth and expansion, you have to understand pricing strategies. You have to understand the costs that go into your products. You need to be able to replicate those favorable types of variances. And I just have never seen where a CMA does not have a better understanding of that than a typical CPA.
Yeah, and I would totally concur with that. And from a bit of a higher level overview, is it just related back to the original question. So, if there's no CMAs, you really have an opportunity to stand out because, as was just pointed out, there's an added level of knowledge concentration that typical CPAs don't do, right? But the other thing too is if you are a CPA, it's still that added designation is something that, it was stated, there's room for tax and audit, right? But this level of concentration, of knowledge concentration in these specific areas really makes people stand out. And again, my friend that I alluded to earlier, she is both a CPA and a CMA, and she went for that CMA designation so she could stand out in these areas amongst her colleagues.
Great. So I think from there, I'd like to take a turn and talk about the exam and preparation for the CMA exam. So I'll start with you, and if you could just talk about maybe what some of the prerequisites might be as far as class credits or if any other certifications are needed, as far as time for preparation of study, what resources might be out there, just kind of going into getting started on heading towards that certification and what that would take.
Sure, I'd be happy to. We'll talk about it in two parts, and the first part will be we'll talk about the exam itself, and then just a little bit about study preparation too. So, to take the CMA exam, you have to have a 4-year degree in any discipline from an accredited college or university. So, unlike the CPA exam where you're required to have specific units in business or accounting, a 4-year degree from an accredited college or university. There's a tremendous amount of resources out there for exam prep, obviously Surgent being one of them, who I'm representing, and there's more information can be given about that afterwards. If you would like to, you can contact me directly. But the IMA has excellent study resources as well, and also GLIME is one of the leaders in this. So as it relates to the exam, it's a 2-part exam, and each part is a 4-hour exam, but I want to explain it a little bit more in detail because it's kind of interesting. So each part has 2 sections. So the first section you'll have, as you take part 1 of the exam, you'll have 100 multiple choice questions, and you'll have up to 3 hours to complete those multiple choice questions. From there, then you go into the essay phase, and you will be given 2 30-minute essay questions. Now, what's interesting about the CMA exam is that you have to get at least 50% on the multiple choice questions to move forward into the essay section. So if for some reason you're testing and you get less than 50%, you're done with the multiple choice questions, you're not even going to be presented with the essay questions. So the good news is that while you don't know your exact score moving forward, you do know if you're presented with the essay questions in hour 4, you've done at least okay, and you're certainly on the track at least passing. Now, the multiple choice questions are computer graded, but the essays are hand grading, and there's a lot of detail that goes into this, which I really like. So the essays are graded by a human being, as I said, and then also if you're on the borderline of passing, there's going to be someone that's going to go back and look at your entire exam again, and specifically those essays to make sure that there weren't alternative outcomes that maybe you presented that weren't looked at as part of the answer. So every opportunity for not just fairness, but just in terms of creativity and how the material is presented, as long as it's within the proper guidelines of correct answers, is afforded the candidate. So it's a really great thing. And then the other thing is what's interesting is that, you can score lower on one section, right? You have to hit that minimum threshold, we said of 50 to move forward, but you can score lower on one section and do really well on, say, the essays, right? And that composite score is what defines whether you pass or fail. And just for those who are interested, it's 500 total points, and you need to get 360 points, is approximately 72%. So that's the high-level overview. There's 3 testing windows: January and February, May and June, September and October. If you take the test in one of those windows and for some reason you don't pass, there's the caveat is that you can't test in the same window. You have to wait until the next window. So the other thing, though, that I would like to focus on is just in terms of the preparation, because this is where I can provide some good overview. I think is that one of the things we tell our candidates, and this is regardless of CPA, CMA, whatever it is you really need to look at this, in my opinion, and with students I've worked with over the years, almost as a part-time job. You're going to put in 100 to 300 hours per exam part. A lot of that varies on what your education, what your previous education is, what you've done for work, etc. But I always tell candidates, approach it like a part-time job, because the payoff is going to be afterwards, right? And if you give it the importance of a part-time job, it's something that's a revenue bringer. That's going to keep you focused on the study path. And I can tell you, when you're taking this on, it's in any type of designation like this or exam that you're preparing for, if you start giving yourself excuses like, I don't know if I have time today to study, well, I don't know if I really need to do this, I'll catch it tomorrow, that's what throws people off the track, and pretty soon you can talk yourself right out of meeting the designation. So you approach this thing as if, and it sounds like a cliche, so forgive me, but you approach it as if, I'm going to do this, I'm not taking any excuses, studying is of primary importance, and we're going to find a way to get it done. So that's why I don't like to sound like I'm lecturing, but I've seen so many people get derailed, in ways like that I just think, again, you have to keep that will not take no for an answer. So I'll stop there and pass it over to Laura. Catherine, if you had anything you'd like to add.
This is Catherine. I absolutely love the advice that you shared about looking at it as a part-time job. I think that is very valid advice. It takes commitment, just like advancing your career would in any way. And I think that's great advice. When I first got my CMA, it was 1995. Some of you were possibly not even born then. And there were no review courses. And I had considered some of the other certifications, the CPA being one of them, and there were some review courses at the time. So what I did was I was active in my accounting chapter at the time, and I sought out other individuals, and we created a study group, and using some, sad-looking eyes and begging, we got cost accounting professors to volunteer their time to meet with us on Saturdays and help us prep. Having other people working towards that goal when you were tempted not to study or focus on the time you had set apart also was a huge help to me. I love being around people, and so it was easy to get distracted, and having a group of people that were working towards the same goal, those were huge. So I would encourage folks not only taking a review course, because Honestly, it's invaluable, but I would also recommend getting people to who are working on the same goal to kind of be your own peer group so you can encourage one another.
I think when you're a student, it's a great time to start thinking about the CMA exam and the certification. One of the things that's available is students can actually sit for the exam. And also, while you're in school, you're in that study mode to begin with. So it's a little harder once you get out of school, you start doing other things, and then you have to get some more discipline back in to sit down and really go through the book, whether it's with a structured review course or it's on your own. So sometimes that's harder to get back into that mindset of studying and taking exams.
That's great advice, Laura. I started the CMA exam. Back then it was 4 parts, and I started it immediately after I wrapped up grad school that semester, and I found it much easier to study and take the test because that was the mindset that I'd been living in. Great advice.
Could I just add one thing too, just off both Laura and Catherine, what you said? That I cannot express how important that is, what you both said, because in any type of testing, any type of exam test like this, regardless of what it is, statistics show the further you get away from your educational experience, the pass rates tend to dip accordingly. And so again, that doesn't mean that you can't pass it if you haven't been taking a college class in 10 years. That's not what it's saying. But what it's saying is you have a leg up already if you're near that. So if you're really thinking about it, get involved with student chapters on campus. Take advantage of what the AFWA has to offer. There's so many resources out there while you're in that mindset. Again, I just want to hit that again. Just go for it while you're in that study mode, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think it helps if you really understand your own study style. For me, I thought about doing the CMA early on, got the books, it sat on the shelf, I never did anything. I needed a little bit more structure behind it. So once my IMA chapter created an in-person review course, that's what got me into the actual study mode with the schedule, with the accountability. So it helps if you understand how you study best as well.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Knowing your own habits. I will say, as someone who has taken different certifications and worked on different things since getting my undergrad, Paul's absolutely right. It is much easier when you're younger, but also, and I am almost 60, so I can probably say this over some people, I had much more endurance when I was in my 20s and 30s to obtain these certifications than I did in my 40s and 50s. Some of it is just the simple fact that as my career progressed, my commitments in the roles that I was filling grew, and it made it harder to be able to focus on things. I agree it's not impossible, but you will make your life much easier if you do it when you're still in that mindset. At least that's my opinion. And it's certainly, the moment I got my CMA, I received a large increase in pay and a promotion. And so getting it earlier on in your career can also help accelerate some things.
Well, that's some good motivation right there. We just got an attendee question in. I think now's a good time to transition to it a little bit. And she has asked if it would make sense to study for the CPA and the CMA exam at the same time and take the 2 exams around the same time. And that also kind of leads into another similar question that we had, just comparing and contrasting the preparation between the 2 exams, the CMA and the CPA.
So, Laura, Catherine, do you want to jump on that one? Because I would say no in terms of preparing for both exams at the same time. But thoughts on that? we can go into the specifics of why, but I would say definitely no.
I'm just going to say point blank, I think that's insane.
Yes, good.
And I'm certainly not the subject matter expert on what falls on both exams at this point in time. But the way I understand it from the CPAs that I work with and that provide services to some of the same clients that I am consulting with nowadays, it is a very, there's very different material, and they're structured in some ways similarly, but the material, in my mind, is what would make for not taking them at the same time. Now, if you're a caffeine adrenaline junkie and you know, you don't want to sleep, then that might work for you. But I would think it was, unless you're not working and this is all you're doing full time, I think it would probably be a little crazy to do both. That's just my opinion. But I've had employees who have tried to focus on more than one professional goal or certification outside of work, and I can tell you it's draining, and it really affects their performance. It's exhausting.
And I think the content is different enough that if you were to start with the, studying for your CPA exams and taking those, and then transition right after that into studying for the CMA exam, that timing might make more sense than trying to do everything at the same time.
Yeah, and again, just to dovetail off that, so I'm glad we all concur on that. You know, the CPA exam, you're going to spend, you're going to spend 300 to 400 hours studying for that, and you're going to spend that over 9 to 12 months. Obviously, you have 18 months to get all 4 parts passed, but that in and of itself, right? That is a part-time job. You still have your work, you still have family obligations, whatever it is. Either of these designations requires tremendous focus. And then there's just simply logistically, there's the testing window issues. The testing windows are a bit different for the CPA exam versus the CMA exam, but you have to allow yourself some time to breathe. It's like working out, right? You don't work out 7 days a week. You go to the gym, you go for, 2 days, and you take a day off. It's the same thing when you're prepping for a test. So I strongly agree with, one hurdle at a time. But I do think the CMA exam does dovetail nicely too off the CPA exam as well, because especially typically people take BEC, which is the last part. That's typically the last part of the CPA exam, which people study and prep for, and that's the areas where cost and managerial accounting is tested for anyway. So if you're rolling along on that track and then you get done and you take BEC, that transitions nicely into the CMA area focus.
One of the things I'll add that I've seen a lot in my career of, at this point, about 4 decades, is that accountants, especially female accountants, we tend to burn ourselves out because we fall into this superwoman perception of ourselves. And to me, if you're trying to do both, that's probably not a good indicator of what you're already starting to do in that area. I think accountants, the best accountants I have met, are the ones who have maintained a good work-life balance and have done that as a force of habit from the beginning. You can be a very high-achieving professional and still maintain balance. And so to that individual who is considering or thinking about doing 2 at the same time, I would, if nothing else, I would take that advice to heart and think about how it could burn you out pretty early, trying to, burn the candles at both ends that early on.
So does that, I think kind of, again, thinking about the CMA and the CPA, and, Laura, maybe I'll give this to you first, where I know you have both your CMA, you have your CPA, you also have your MBA. Do you feel like that kind of all blends together, or do you have times where you very specifically think, I'm in my CMA world right now, this is the hat I'm wearing, and then maybe another time I'm a CPA today and this is what I'm doing? Or do they work together, or are they still very distinct in kind of your day-to-day work?
Both, I think, because I'm in a small company in a small department. I kind of have to wear all the hats all the time, so I am that voice of, this is how we have to do things for the financial statements or for taxes and things like that. And then at the same time, I'm trying to work on how can we improve our margins and how can we be more effective, and how can operations work with sales, work with accounting to make sure we're doing what we need to really move the company forward. So I think it kind of depends on what environment you're in. If you're in a larger company where things are a little bit more siloed, then I think you can really just focus on that analysis and that strategy side, so you can just wear your CMA hat. But I think really it depends on the environment and how many other team members that you can really rely on for those different skill sets.
Okay, great. So I think that we have covered a lot of ground in what the CMA is, what the exam might look like, just kind of some good overview. So I think we'll kind of just sort of move into wrap up here, but I want to give each of our panelists another opportunity to kind of give their final advice or anything that you might have to say to somebody who is considering going for her CMA, what you might be able to say or advice you could give in helping her make that decision, or just anything else you would like to add before we wrap up today. And I'll start with Catherine on that.
I will say that obtaining the CMA certification was by far the best decision I made for the particular career path that I was wanting to blaze. I have, in a lot of ways, had to take the machete and cut my own path. And now I work, in one sense, as an outside accountant. So some people think of me as being back in public, but I work with small business owners who are fantastic experts in their subject matter and what it is their business does. But the CMA has allowed me to come in and have such a broad basis or breadth of knowledge and experience that they, as business owners, appreciate. Most everyone knows what a CPA is. I do find myself frequently explaining what a CMA is, but that is growing. The awareness and the knowledge of it has grown a lot. And when my clients understand the difference, they are pretty excited about it because they understand how it impacts their internal operations. And I think that's one of the biggest things that a CMA brings to the table is, the difference it makes in daily operations and strategic planning and decision making and things like that.
Thank you, Catherine. Laura, do you have anything to add?
Two thoughts kind of popped into my head. One, there's, for anyone who's in accounting, for our students, there's so much emphasis on taking that public route that I think if you really wanted to go straight into industry, I think getting the CMA is a great way to showcase that, yes, I'm committed to this career path and I've got those skill sets and things like that to even enter into it and then to continue to grow into it. And then the other one is for anyone who's taken that more traditional path, gone into public accounting, has been doing the tax or the audit, and then years later decides they want to transition to industry, which so many do. At that point, it would be great to add that CMA to it so you can, again, showcase you've got that specific skill set and experience that you need to be effective in your new role. And if you think about all of your competition, everyone who's also making that transition, setting yourself aside apart with that CMA could definitely be helpful as you try to transition into industry.
Thank you, Laura. And Paul, what do you have to add?
Sure, I have one thing to add. It's just revolving around sort of a brief history lesson. I promise it'll be quick, and I will try not to bore everybody. But it has to do with cyclical economies. And again, I called on my friend to give some input on this as well. One of the things that we see in the test prep environment has to do with when the economy is good, there tends to be a deviation from people pursuing licenses or designations. A lot of that's driven again by companies who are like, oh, we're gonna, the economy's good, and so the pay is good, and we need workers, and you know what, the risk and advisory services section is growing, and you don't need a designation for that, or you don't need a license for that. But what happens is the economy will turn, as it always does, and every time it does, then there's a rush to get back to these designations, right? Because you're trying now to stand out from the crowd. And so my friend, she did this actually. She got her CMA when the economy was good, and then when it turned, we had the last downturn in 2007 or 2008. She already had that leg up on everybody. So I just urge people right now, you know, if you're thinking about doing it. I mean, it's easy to get enticed by, you know, good money and good opportunities while the economy is good, but when it goes south, that's the first thing they look for is who has their MBA or their master's in accounting, who has their CPA, who has their CMA. Those types of designations will definitely help you stand out. So it's almost almost some sort of a career security blanket, I would say.
Great advice, Paul.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it might tie in a little bit to another attendee question that we just got, or I think maybe something Laura said earlier kind of alludes to this a little bit. But so one of our attendees has asked, she said that the CMA was never even mentioned as an option when she was in college back in 07, 08. So she's wondering why they really only pushed the CPA for advancement and what your all's thoughts are on that.
This is Catherine. I have a fairly strong opinion about that. Maybe it's my Yankee background, but I was the same way. I got out of undergrad in 1982 and was amazed when I learned about all the different certifications in addition to the CPA that were out there. And I think part of that is the AICPA, and that credential has been around for a very long time. I also think that it is a difficult exam, and between the history, the length of time it's been around, and the popularity of it, the program is focused on testing for that. I think it does a disjustice or an inservice to the profession because there are so many different roles that accountants play. I often liken it to the medical profession. There are a ton of different specialties, and it's the same way in accounting. And some of that, I think, needs to be addressed by those of us who have already graduated and began careers, and really getting involved with students and those who are young in their professional path, because there are so many opportunities. And accounting is an amazing career with a lot of fun in it. But in the academic environment, we do a very, very poor job of really setting that stage for folks going through the program. And it's my opinion, if we did a better job of that and push the universities to really expose degree seekers to those variety of things that are out there, that we'd get more people that are interested in obtaining their accounting degree and following that path.
Was this Catherine? Catherine, was that you that just spoke?
Yes.
Catherine, you are so 100% correct about this, and I'll take it even a step further. In addition to what Catherine said about the AICPA, you also have to look at who drives the revenue and the agenda in the accounting profession, right? And typically so much of it's driven by the Big Four, and the designation, the CPA designation, right? That's the designation that goes along with the Big Four. So what I think, to Catherine's point, what we have to do is do a better job at the academic level, and I think we are starting to do that because the IMA, the IMA has done a fantastic job, in my opinion, of really bringing this designation out and making it stand out and giving it the notoriety that it deserves. Because I'll be honest with you, all of the Big Four and a lot of the top 10 accounting firms, you can become a CMA, they'll pay for it. It just doesn't get the notoriety. So if we start doing that at, again, like I said, hats off to the IMA and what they're doing, but through organizations like this and through these types of webinars and another thing, I think it becomes more well-known. And then we have to help people engage at the student level as well. So for instance, like with Beta Alpha Psi, right, is you think CPA when you think that. But we have started partnering with the IMA and the student chapters to just bring people an awareness of all these opportunities. that are out there. So again, I get fired up about that because yeah, it's like people don't even know about this, and it's like, no, this is a big deal, and it's important, and all the big accounting firms will support it, absolutely.
I think one thing I've noticed is that it's really school specific. So when I did my undergrad at NAU, they actually had two different choices under their accounting major. One was public, one was managerial. And if I had gone to ASU where the focus was just on that public track, I don't know what my career would have looked like. But again, we've had some great IMA student chapters with Grand Canyon University, and they too are also very focused on giving both of those kind of equal, opportunity and time in front of the students. But I think one thing that like our AFWA chapters and our members have this great opportunity to do is to reach out to those colleges and those business departments, and we've got this breadth of membership from all of these different career paths. We're just now available for the students to kind of introduce them to whatever path in accounting and finance they want to do, whether it's tax or audit or corporate or financial planning. I think we're a great resource for professors and colleges to really tap into and introduce their students to all of these credentials.
And I think that's a really great question and discussion that just kind of adds to why the foundation of AFWA is excited about this new series of webinars that we obviously talked about the CMA today. We're working on a similar panel discussion on the CFP as well as the CIA, as well as some of the other various certifications and credentials that are available through scholarships and review courses that we have by working with our partners. So I think just another reason why, again, the foundation is putting these together to provide some education for that. And then, as Laura said, just overall, the connections of AFWA, I think that just adds to the importance of professional organizations and getting involved and meeting more women and men in the industry kind of opens your eyes to some of the other opportunities that are out there on where your career can take you in this industry. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kind of close us out here. I just want to give a big thank you to all of our panelists on the line today. I also want to say thank you to Melissa and the foundation for helping to organize this discussion today. We will have, again, a recording of this available on the website if you know anybody else who might be interested in watching it following this presentation. I'll also email out some contact information for our panelists today should you have any other questions that maybe you didn't get a chance to ask them. We will stay on the line for just a few more minutes if anybody has any questions that they want to ask before we leave. But with that, thank you to the panelists, and thank you for those of us who are able to listen in on today's discussion. Thanks.
Thank you.